Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you all for your involvement and interest in regional transportation within a thing. Let me turn my phone off. So I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I'm going to hand it over to Rick and let him establish voting members today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to let the CAC know that Carlos, Cindy, and Nichols and Craig were all reappointed by their member government, so they are viable CAC members, excuse me. However, because the county seat on the CAC, Richard Robertson seat, is under consideration, and some of the applicants for Richard Robertson's county seat also applied for at-large seats. The board chair and vice chair decided to yield to let the county make their selection first to fill Richard Robertson's seat, and then our process would resume with Rick Hoover and Tony Joya competing against 3 or 4 other candidates. So our process is on hold, which meant that Rick Hoover and Tony, whose terms expired December 31, are temporarily not members. So that's why you'll see on page 2 of the agenda, their seats are vacant along with Richard Robertson's. So that's the status of that. So we do have a quorum today, but that's the status of the situation with the county seat and Tony and Rick Hoover. Questions?
Questions, anyone? Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Rick. Okay. So the item number 2 is approval of the agenda as presented. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Ed, thank you. Second?
David Zelenak, I'll second that.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any approval? Any disapproval? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Is that Karen was online?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Karen. All right, item number 3, election of CAC officers. So today we elect CAC officers. I'll just let you know that I serve at I'm proud to be part of this group and proud to serve as chair. I'm willing to continue that, but I serve at your pleasure. I am just as happy to be a member, but I'll wait and see how the election goes over. So I'll turn it to Rick.
In keeping with that practice, obviously the chair can't ask for a motion relative to the chair. So that's why, in keeping with past practice, I've been handling that. So, and if there's more than one nomination, I have little slips of paper for voting. Yes, sir. Question.
Do we know which alternates are able to vote today?
Very good. Very good catch. Rich, you can vote. All alternates can vote right now because do we have Cindy or Bruce confirmed? No. So all alternates can vote right now. Only Rich is on the bubble because obviously I covered the fact that we have 3 vacancies. So, so Rich is the only one on the bubble. The other alternates are good for the whole meeting. Good catch. Okay. I'm opening the floor to nominations for chair of the PPRTA CAC for calendar year 2024.
This is Karen. This is Karen Asplin. I'd like to move to elect Jim Godfrey for chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Steve Murray, second. Are there any other nominations? Any other motions? Okay. Is there a motion to approve Jim Godfrey as chair.
I would so
We
move.
have the motion and the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Thanks, Ed.
Unanimous.
Thanks, Ed,
Congratulations.
for the facial expression that, since I only do this once a year.
Thank you all for your confidence. I will do everything I can to make you proud, I hope. So thank you. Okay, so next would be the first vice chair. And my understanding is Larry is still willing to be first chair.
That is correct.
Do I have any nominations for first vice chair?
I would like to move that Larry Tobias name be placed in consideration.
Okay,
I'll second.
Ed, second. Thank you. Any other nominations for first vice chair? Anyone online? Okay, not seeing any, then do I take a vote for Larry Tobias as first vice chair of the committee? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, not hearing one. Congratulations. Thank you. All right, second vice chair. Yes, sir, Russell.
I would like to nominate Ed Dills.
Okay, we have a nomination for Ed Dills.
I'd like to go ahead, Carlos.
Carlos, second. Thank you. Any other nominations for second vice chair? Not seeing or hearing any. All those in favor of Ed Dills being the second vice chair of the CAC, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations. Thank you. We do good work on this committee, and I am honored, and I broadcast and brag about it all the time. And we do the citizens' work here, and we do a good job at it. So thank you all. All right. Public comments for anything not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments from anyone? Anyone in the audience, online?
Jim, I'll make a comment.
Okay, thank you, Brandy.
I just wanted to officially announce to this board that I will be running for county commissioner for District 3. District 3 is the west side, basically everything west of I-25. Stan Vanderwerth is term limited. So obviously, if I'm elected, I will relinquish my seat on this board. But until then, I will be showing up every month and commenting as usual. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I just wanted everyone to be aware.
Thank you, Brandy. Congratulations and good
Thank
luck.
you. Thank you.
I remember back to the days of city council when you were. Any other public comments? All right, very good. Thank you. Approval of the minutes from the December 6th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as published? Anybody read them?
Larry Tobias, I move for approval of last month's minutes of the meeting.
Do I have a second? Okay, thank you, Ed. Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes as published, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Financial reports, Miss Lisa.
Lisa Corey, Finance Manager for the PPRTA. The financials I'm reporting is the sales and use tax collected for the month of October. So we were above the monthly budget by $419,360 or 3.3%. October of 23 revenues fell below October of 22 by $107,461 or negative 0.8%. As for some highlights overall for the year from January through October, we are above budget. And this is the budget that we set lower than the year prior. But when we look at the year prior, if we had not done that, we've collected less in 23 than we did in 22.
Yeah, things have, but I think things are improving. The outlook looks better, so we'll see. Hopefully things are stabilizing. But the good news is that we should be able to stay within budget. We got the money. We don't need to be worrying about taking anything back from many of the members. So that's the good point, right?
Yep.
Okey doke. Right, any questions for Lisa on the financial reports? Okay,
Graph. Are we
Okay.
required to put this in here or?
No,
is
it
this
was
just like our monthly
requested.
challenge?
Yeah, it was just requested to include it just for comparison.
And does somebody know what it means? Since it gets garbled every month?
Well, it's not this way every time.
Okay,
So the
just
one
the
I had
last-
prior, it looked fine. But this is actually pulling it from CDOT's website and they upload their whole report as one PDF. So I just pick out this page and there was really no way for me to fix it. So
Okay.
I checked last week to see if maybe they saw it and corrected it, but it's the same. So
So if anybody has any friends at CDOT, you can work on this graph.
do you know anybody at CDOT, Rich?
If you wouldn't mind, Rich, I think it'd be very beneficial.
They need to renew their licensing for bonds.
All right. Item number 7, 2024 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. So let's start off with Colorado Springs. Gail?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gail Sturtevant, City of Colorado Springs. I have 8 contracts for your consideration for today. The first one is for the PPRTA on-call capital landscape maintenance contract. We do this every year to do specific maintenance for capital projects that have been put in place with PPRTA funding. The city previously went through an RFP process and selected TP Enterprises, put an on-call contract in place. We are electing to exercise our third option year and put in place a contract for $401,939.76 for requested maintenance services for 2024. The city's second contract is a renewal of the project and construction management software. If those of you who've been around for a while recall, a couple of years ago, the city went through an RFP process. We had 11 or 12 respondents. We select Rigo's software technology Masterworks. When we put that original contract in place, it has 4 option years. This will be the second renewal. Our city's total cost is $110,000, of which PPRT's portion would be $66,250. The city's third contract today is for on-call traffic signal installation and major repairs. The city went through an RFP process. We had 3 respondents. We've selected 2. We would like to put on-call contracts in place for C&D Electric and Sturgeon Electric in the amount of $2 million each, subject to our needs and budget availability. This is the first year. We would have 4 option years available on that contract. City's fourth contract is for to supply traffic signal pole boxes and cabinet bases. This is a material only. But the city did go through an RFP process. We had 2 respondents. We selected one, Wesco. We'd like to put a contract in place for up to $300,000. And then that gets exercised on a purchase order basis for materials as needed for installation by city crews.
Gail?
Yes, sir.
A question on that. We've had discussions in the past, a rough estimate of what it takes to redo an intersection.
Yeah.
And it seems to me it was around that 300,000 number, give or take 50,000 or so.
Right. If you were going to go do a whole new intersection construction, I always like to use at least 250. I would say between 250 and 300,000, depending on the size of your cross streets. But you got to remember, this is material only for our crews to go and do maintenance work
Okay,
on signals. It is not for a full signal installation,
Okay.
unlike the previous contract.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Contract number 5 is also to supply traffic signal wires and cabling. Again, this is a material only contract. The city went through an RFP process. We had 2 respondents and we selected both Wesco and TW Cable. We're proposing to put contracts in place for $250,000 each. And again, the city would use those contracts to issue purchase orders to get the material as needed for us to go to perform work within the right of way. The city's sixth contract is for on-call concrete. Or is to execute a task order under an existing on-call concrete contract with Lucky Dog. This task order would be to do concrete repair work along Cascade Avenue between Uinta and Platte Avenue. It would be in the amount of $212,532.06.
This is separate from any 2C work being done.
This is separate, yes. Contract number 7 is for pre-overlay concrete for both PPRTA and 2C. The city went through a huge RFP process with the contract, concrete construction contractors. We had 13 respondents. We're selecting 7 to be placed on-call contracts to perform concrete pre-overlay concrete work. Most of that work would fall under 2C and wouldn't be relevant to PPRTA, but we do use these same contracts and the pricing underneath these same contracts for some PPRTA work. So we are asking for PPRTA to approve the contract for the 7 selected vendors. The initial contract value for PPRTA would be $0. And
Gail,
yes, sir.
would there be in the future some sort of dollar figure for PPRTA?
There could
funds?
be, yes, if need be, if we needed to go do, it's like, we'll use PPRTA on-call concrete contracts if we have, let's say we had a request to go do an ADA repair within the public right of way that was not on a 2C roadway. What we would do, we'd schedule that and use PPRTA funds to go and address that. So we would have these on-call contracts in place so we could issue a task order to one of these 7 to go and perform that work for us.
But will there be a maximum dollar amount on this particular contract or?
It would be subject to budget availability. There is no specific contract dollar value right now.
Okay, and that's going to be my next question on your number 8 item too is probably the same.
Yeah,
Same issue.
that's a little different, but yes, somewhat the same. The fuel thing gets very complicated. But yes, if we needed that, then we obviously would issue a task order based on our budget availability. So PPRTA funds, let's say if I put $1 million in that bucket for the team to use, as those requests come in, we would issue task orders based on both competitive pricing for whatever needed to be or availability of the contractor to go and address that need. We issue a task order that based on our current availability. There's no contract value right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, contract number 8, and I think you guys end up seeing this every 3 or 4 years, is for bulk fuel pricing. The city went through an RFP process. We got respondents. We got 3 respondents, and we are selected to put a contract in place with all 3 vendors: Chief Petroleum, Synergy Petroleum, and Often Petroleum. This contract currently does not have a contract value. But really when these contracts are put in place, because the fuel pricing ends up being a commodity, we're not locking in those prices for multiple years at this time. The procurement office goes and solicits the best pricing for these vendors at that time based on what the fuel needs are, and then issues a contract based on that amount. PPRTA does cover some maintenance and capital most often. Every once in a while we'll have, maintenance and transit uses these fuel contracts. And so PPRTA money can be used for that. On occasion, PPRTA money could be used for capital, although not as often. But we did want to make sure that we brought this contract forward to the CAC and board so that you understand that we're renewing these fuel contracts and that there could be a budget implication. Right now, they've estimated on the high side of 50,000 for everything up with its non-transit related. And transit would be dependent upon one, the pricing, and 2, with this contract, how we pay for the fuel. So for example, this fuel contract this year will have federal clauses. So if we have transit formula funds or some other grant funds used, we will try to use that as much as possible to pay for those fuel costs. And then maybe using PPRTA for the local match for those grants, which is either 10 or 20%, depending on the color of the money. So that's an overall presentation of the city's contract, 8 contracts. I'd be happy to answer questions.
I do have a question. If we go back to contracts 3, 4, and 5. I had read where the county was going to contract the city to do signal lights.
Yes.
Will this impact your budget? Or are they transferring, or how does that work?
So, yes, the city, it did just enter in an IGA with El Paso County where we're going to take over the operation and maintenance of 55 of their signals. As part of that agreement, the county is going to pay a one-time fee for us to go through and really convert I was going to say the guts in the control box for these traffic signals, so they will work well with our operation system. And then they're going to pay us on a per signal basis for 2 maintenance cycles per year to go through and perform maintenance on those signals. So they're paying for it. We're just providing the expertise and the resource and consolidate them in all one
Okay,
location.
so there's no impact on these 3
there is
contracts.
no impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good question. Any other questions for Gail on the city's contract?
I
Brandon?
have kind of a Gail Lawn question. Has anybody had time, and I know the answer is no, but I'm gonna ask anyway, to look over the last 20 years and see if it would have been nice to lock in those fuel prices, or are they so volatile?
They're
or
too
did you
volatile.
find
So
the time?
no, I personally did not find the time, but I found the people that this is their job.
Good.
So we have in the past, and Land may want to supplement what I say, we have in the past locked in fuel prices for a year or multiple years. Right now, we're really not finding that option. And when they went to go renew this contract last time, the fuel price was so volatile, we couldn't get them to lock in. And we even looked, I believe it was just last year again, and because fuel prices were so high, we did not want to lock in. And that's all done through our fleet services. They manage that. Our facilities and under fleet do that. We talked about it again with the solicitation and they chose not to do it right now and really couldn't get folks to lock into the pricing because it's all over the place.
So it sounds like if it's high, they'll let you lock, but if it's low, it's not an option.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, all right, now we know.
I've
True
got it.
commodity pricing.
And I got a question. So on the fuel services, with the combining now of maintenance for utilities and city, does that have an impact on the
Yeah,
fuel at all?
It doesn't change the fuel situation because fuel was always separate contract with the city. Circle only provided maintenance services.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions for the city and their contracts? Not seeing any online or in the room. So do I hear a motion to recommend the city's projects as presented? All right, thank you. Second. All right, Craig, give you credit for that one. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, not seeing any. I thank you. Not seeing any recommendation to approve city's contracts as presented. All right, Manitou Springs, Dole. Yes, so we're gonna have Dole come up and then I want to give you guys an update. Do you want to introduce? Do you want to start anything? You want me to do it?
Once you do it, and I'll bring in the rear.
Okay. So if you remember last month, we approved Manitou's request to swap out some EV chargers at their swimming pool. It was discovered after the meeting that the actual A-list capital project that was going to use those funds was not identified in the paperwork or their stuff. And that was counter to the normal process that we have. So when we got to the board last month, we brought that up to the leadership. And the leadership decided to defer approval of that project to come back to us to correct that and identify that project for the record and what that would be. there was also some discussion about EV chargers and that kind of thing. So there was some correspondence that took place with the lawyer. So I'm going to let Rick cover some of the discussion and the thoughts on what transpired after the board meeting. So I'll let Rick cover that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the CAC has seen in my memo, the specific Manitou Springs capital project, sorry for my voice, was not identified to you last month. In conversations with Ms. Dole Grabenik, standing at the podium right now, he indicated that Manitou Springs would like to use their downtown, their capital project. The name is Manitou Springs Downtown Sidewalk Drainage and Utilities Improvements. So obviously the EV chargers are not sidewalk, they're not drainage. So the only possible interpretation for EV chargers to fall within this capital name would be utilities. So that as you saw in my memo, I consulted with the PPRTA attorney to see if the state law, the RTA state law would allow utilities. And you'll see in there that the attorney and I both interpret that, yes, the RTA state law would allow it. The next step is, would this be capital with a small c, not necessarily Manitou Springs specific capital project name, but just capital in general. And I included in the packet the guidance memo that several years ago the board worked up with CAC input, and it appears that a total replacement of EV chargers would be approved under capital being a small c capital, not necessarily Manitou Springs capital, PPRTA capital project. So that meets the first two hurdles. The third hurdle is then falls into the definition of utilities. And there isn't really a clear definition. So that's what's before the CAC and ultimately the board, is to define utilities in this context. So as I indicated in my memo, there's the glass is half full, glass is half empty. One argument is that there's a federal and state push, including federal grants, for EV chargers to be located all around the country. And that could be interpreted to be a new electric infrastructure to support electric vehicles. Don't know if that gets all the way to the word utility, but that's what's before you today. So when you look at the common sense use of the word utility, it's usually talking about the Mountain View Electric or Black Hills Energy or Colorado Springs Utilities. Those are all utility companies, or in the case of CSU, it's probably an enterprise, but the normal use is there are utility companies. So then what's a utility? Is the utility a utility company, or is a utility the power lines, water lines, gas lines, sewage lines, storm sewer lines, electric substations, lift stations? You know, what is a utility? Maybe EV chargers nationwide is a new utility. Flip side of that is maybe EV charger stations are no more than the same as an electric outlet in any house. So where does the CAC and board sit on the word utilities relative to EV chargers? So that's one dimension. The other dimension is, should there be a board policy? And that's the number 5 in my memo. as there's an existing City of Colorado Springs program fund that could be interpreted to allow the city to come forward now and ask for EV chargers under their program fund. And there's a program fund in PPRTA 3, which we'll get to a year from now, that's called State and Federal Discretionary Grant Match Fund. And since there's lots of federal money floating around for these things, including the federal money that Manitou Springs has gotten for the EV chargers that they're proposing that we provide the match. So all 6 member governments could come in and use that program fund a year from now and ask for lots of EV chargers, dozens, hundreds, thousands. So where is the CACN board relative to EV chargers? Where do you interpret that the voters are that approved PPRTA 3, PPRTA 2, and PPRTA 3? So where are you on this? And in the very last, to carry this to an extreme, there could be dozens or hundreds of these things. They could be at every swimming pool, public swimming pool, rec center, senior center, community center. You don't have to be limited to public property. They could be at every church. They could be at every big box. So where do you want to go with this? How far do you want to go? And should there be a board policy on this before or after this application? And with that, I'll turn it back to Chair.
Dole, you want to respond to that?
Gentlemen, thank you very much. That was a terrific intro. And as you can see, when they brought this, first of all, I want to apologize to you for leaving that capital project off of my original memo. But Rick, thank you for catching that. And as you can tell that they have worked diligently, and we've been on the phone a lot to try to better understand and define this. One of our perspectives was, 11, 12 years ago when this project list for PPRTA 2 was developed. I mean, Elon Musk was still with, who knows what company. EV chargers weren't really a thing then. And if they probably would have been, there probably would have been language that was maybe more specific to them, perhaps. We don't know. So I kind of feel like this is an opportunity for us to, as Rick said, to have this conversation and see if this is what the PPRTA as an agency and as a transportation supporting agency wants to do. Us in Manitou, as Rick said, we do have a grant from the Volkswagen settlement money that's using to help pay the other half of this. We would be using these RTA funds to match that for us. And just a little bit of background too, as you guys know, we came to you a year ago for EV chargers at Hiawatha, which was part of that mobility. And there's no question about whether that was eligible or not. And we've had those chargers installed. We have 5 chargers. We have 1 type 3 DC charger and 4 type 2 chargers, which are the slower ones. And we've had almost 700 charging sessions since the last week in August. And it's very seasonal for us. So our curve matches our visitor usage. So we have been on slow decline ever since, but I think come April and May, we'll be right back up there again. So we are having a lot of usage. The other thing about these specific chargers, and the board doesn't necessarily care about this, but Manitou does, is the chargers we currently have now are eligible to be used for free. And so, these were installed really before there was even the infrastructure to charge for charging. We got to come up with a better phrase for that. And so we as a city are very motivated to swap these out. So when we got this grant and we thought we had a fair chance at a PPRTA capital project. So here we are today to talk about it.
Okay. So I've been thinking a lot about this since the board meeting. We had a good discussion. And I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm just going to share my thoughts with you guys to bend around a little bit. My concern is looking, as Rick mentioned, down the road. And this is not going to go away. It's going to be something that is more and more people are going to be doing. And so is there revenue generated from them? Is it in the right of way or out of the right of way? Is it on private property, as Rick pointed out? And so my concern is that if we approve this project now without a board policy and without that discussion and the legal review, establishing some barriers and some guardrails to what is and what isn't, maybe a park and ride that happens to be funded with RTA, if they're still doing that, would fit in, but maybe not a church parking lot, even though they both support electric vehicles. So my concern is that if we go down the road and approve this without a policy, then later go back and improve a policy that says, no, we're not doing it, then somebody's going to come forward and say, well, you approved them for so-and-so, why not me? And I personally had not rather go down that road. I had rather recommend to Manitou that we delay this another month. We go to the board. We approach this as let's get a policy in place. Let's bound it, restrict it, guard it, whatever that is, and involved with the board lawyer, and then come forward and bring this so that we can say to the public that we've done our homework on this. We've set up guidelines and things that we're making sure that these things are supporting the transportation system, not someone's revenue or private or the concerns. And so we don't know, as Doyle pointed out, we don't know where these things are going to go in the future, but we only know they're going to expand with the push of electric vehicles. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to delay this, go forward to the board, recommend a board policy, and go through that process before we start approving additional things. Hiawatha Gardens was a little different because we had already approved Hiawatha Gardens as a transit center, and that was in a transit center in a system designed to support that. And they already had a couple of electric chargers there. Did you not know that was the only one? But that was part of a transit center, and it was designed for that. So I say that's a little different than this current situation. So I've been, like I said, I've been giving this a lot of thought over the last couple of weeks, and those are my thoughts. So I'll open it up for discussion. Russ?
Do we know the lifespan of a charger?
The charger has a very long lifespan. In fact, the grant requires us to have a 5-year warranty on them, and the DC ones, actually you have to swap out the coolant, so they're liquid cooled. But we anticipate them being a 15 to 20 year lifespan.
Does this become an ownership of the community? In other words, it's a permanent asset of your community?
Yes, I think yes, I think if I'm interpreting your question right, yes. The city would own these, and it's a part of the city and part of the community.
And then replacements, if they do fail for whatever reason?
So if they do fail, we would service them. I mean, these are electronics. So if they need service, we have an agreement through ChargePoint, the supplier. They will come service them. There's probably going to be a point in the future where maybe they have to be swapped out. I think the industry is really rather so new to that I don't know if there's a lot of data on these newest, like we're already swapping out 1st gen Tesla chargers. Right. And I'm sure when they were making those, they had no idea. Well, maybe they did. They would evolve into what they are today. So I think that we would have to but these are revenue generating. So the city would manage those with an operations and maintenance fraction of money that goes back that we would save that then would go back to service and maintain these. So I don't know if it's fair for me to say yet, but the anticipation was RTA would not be involved in necessarily the maintenance of these again. We would maintain them through our own.
Yeah, that was the essence of my question, was if it was a limited lifespan and then it's like an ongoing expense for RTA. Okay.
David?
Just an expansion of Russell's question, maybe. Tell us about the revenues generated, if any, by these. I know that on the one hand, you could argue that if it's a seed investment. In other words, just plant a small amount of money in, and then wow, Manitou gets $1 million a year back in sweet cash.
That's how much we're getting, Dave. is $1
That's what I
million.
thought. Yeah. I'm sure this is a
They're
massive
CSU
cash
plugged into our
cow.
chargers and we're charging.
Just
Um,
talk to the revenue split though, so we have a better understanding.
So I can only comment on the current 5 chargers that are there now are basically cost the city about $500 a month in electricity. So we basically just,
And they're all free.
they're all free.
And if I may, and we just looked at the Google Maps. There's a Tesla charger there also,
There's
right?
4 Tesla chargers and 1 generic charger.
So just for the record, then we're just talking about the one,
No,
Or-
we're going to replace all 5.
including the
because-
Tesla chargers.
Including the Tesla chargers.
Okay.
Yes, because those again are all, they're just direct plug. There's no access. You can't charge the user. They are just directly used by whoever. It
All
might as well be
free.
one in your garage.
Okay,
It's the same technology.
okay. But the revenue goes where then?
So the revenue we have that we're generating at Hiawatha currently is going back into Manitou's general fund, I think. And that money then gets allocated back to maintenance and operations and service of those and of that Hiawatha area.
So right now, there's no revenue generated because there's no charge for these.
No,
There's no
I
charge
didn't
for
get to your full question yet, Dave.
Okay.
So I don't know the exact numbers because it's changing every month and obviously by the
Yeah.
number of
Just
usage.
conceptually.
It's also a little bit more complicated at Hiawatha because so the way ChargePoint system is set up is so we'll just go back to the beginning. So Colorado Springs Utilities has worked with the city of Colorado Springs for some of the chargers in their parking garage. So we reached out to the same contact and so they helped us develop our pricing so that, because as you guys know, Colorado Springs Utilities electricity is actually complicated, right? So you have a service charge, you have like an access charge, and then you actually pay per kilowatt. But you have an on-peak and an off-peak. You have an on-peak residential, you have an on-peak commercial. So you have all these different times of day. So basically from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. commercial, your electricity is about 2.5 times more expensive than your off-peak, right? So if you're going to go charge at a big charger, you want to go after 6 p.m. or before 10 a.m., which guess what? That's terrific for our residents because that's when they need it. So they can come off work, they go in the evening, they plug in, they charge for 25 minutes and they can go. So revenue wise, we spend about $300 to $350 a month in electricity right now on those chargers. And our revenue is $1,500 to $2,000 per month. But it's a little more complicated because we are
So,
also,
Can I ask a quick clarifying? You're charging at Hiawatha,
we're
right? But
charging, people have to pay
Right,
to use those chargers.
but you're not charging for the ones that are on the
Correct. They're
table
not
right now.
capable of
Right,
people to
So
pay
the-
money to.
right. I just want everybody to understand there's EV chargers in 2 different locations, but they're only being able to charge for one right
Right.
now.
So the ones at Hiawatha, we are also charging the users to park there because that's a paid parking lot. So just because you're charging your car doesn't mean you get to park for free. So we charge a parking hourly rate and then we charge kind of a standard electricity consumption rate per kilowatt hour.
Okay, and that's different than these
Yes,
charges.
the ones we're proposing is not a paid lot.
Okay, that's where I was confused.
Yes. And they currently, if any of you have an EV, you can drive up there and plug in right now. You don't have to have an account. You don't have to have anything. You just plug in and you can use it. Yeah.
I was leaving.
I know you don't have one.
So, I had a little bigger picture question, I guess, because one of the concerns you brought up, I think, is, who's going to come out of the woodwork looking for these charges? I think we can't avoid it. It's important for the future. But how do you decide on where you're going to place chargers? Do you have a systemic plan in place, those kinds of things? And how do you develop that?
Yeah. So this one was easy because these are the only EV chargers that the city of Manitou owns. And they were installed by a grant many years ago. And now that we are elevating our sophistication of understanding these, we quickly realized. And the other thing that happened was the Charge Ahead Colorado grant became available. So we used that to pay for the first round of chargers, and then we applied again to help offset the cost of these. So that Charge Ahead grant wasn't available 5 years ago. It's available now. We also understand how the system works, and this system is sophisticated enough now. I actually can log in and get reports and understand the data and the usage of them. So, I mean, it's here, but these are the only ones that we have. I think I'm going to say it. I think Manitou has opportunity to roll out more chargers in more areas. But we're still kind of in the infancy of that as well.
So do you envision you eventually develop a plan of what you're looking?
I think so. One of the things that's unique to Manitou is that when we were talking with the community, we heard very much that because of the terrain, the tight streets, a lot of homeowners, renters don't have a garage, a lot of street parking. You can't have an EV if you park on the street. I mean, you could, but having this cord go across the sidewalk and it's awkward. And so a lot of people were like, hey, if you could have centralized type 3 DC chargers, or these type 2 where we could sit for 2 hours and walk or have lunch or whatever, we would use them and be more likely to buy an EV. So we feel like that these fit community, they fit transportation. The fact that our usage is seasonal, matches the seasonal curve, suggests that the users are visitors as well. So we'll have a baseline amount of residents that use it. And hopefully that baseline increases over time, which I just read that Tesla just sold 485,000 Teslas in the last quarter. So they're on track to sell almost 2 million cars this year. So, they're available and they're readily available. So I think as we get to adopt them, it's a chicken and the egg thing, I think, as well. Do we have the infrastructure to support Manitou residents and visitors charging when they visit? Yes. Well, if we have it, I think more people will buy EVs. If they buy more EVs, we'll need to have more creative EV charging opportunities. And then that cycle continues until we have a more robust, maybe citywide plan. Thanks.
Yeah, did you have a question or you just point? Okay. Brandy?
Jim, I completely agree. I think we're at the beginning of this conversation, and I think it would be very prudent to put something in place so that we don't have to have this conversation every time. And then it feels like we like these people, we don't like these people, we understand this project, we don't understand this project. And as you were presenting, I stumbled upon an article from the Public Utilities Commission for the state of Colorado, and they're having this conversation at a high level. So I'm assuming we should probably write our board policy such that it will conform with the PUC's decision. I know that Colorado Springs Utilities doesn't always have to adhere to what the PUC decides, but I don't know that this board is exempt from decisions from the Public Utilities Commission. And they brought up the same exact thing, Dole. It's a chicken and the egg, which came first, the electric vehicle or the EV charger, and who owns it and who gets to own it and who gets to charge for it and who doesn't get to charge for it. So I think it's coming, and I think it'll be most prudent for us to put something in place, which doesn't help Dole. Is there a timeline?
As we were talking about this, we're happy to be the
guinea pig.
Yes. And we do think it's important. I think several people would think it's important, maybe some don't. So, I mean, we have the grant, we have a year to spend the grant. So we have time just to take a step back and work through a board policy, and then to come back with that board policy implemented. And then, and then if so, and then to come back and try this again.
And then depending upon what this board feels, we may end up sending someone up to testify at the PUC about what we want for our community when it comes to electric vehicles and the chargers that go with them.
Yeah. Well, Dole, you answered my next question and that is that you're willing to be flexible and let us work this through so we get it right. Because I think that we have an opportunity to get this right in the eyes of the public. And we've only got one chance to do that. And if we do it afterwards, we're backing up and trying to defend ourselves. And I'd rather not be in that role. So, Dave?
I completely agree, Mr. Chair. Well, the one suggestion I would like to offer is that as staff looks at ways of structuring this, that you look beyond, I guess to Brandy's point, look beyond just what would work here. What's the best practices right now for similar ones elsewhere? And try to, without reinventing the wheel, try to use those other best practices. I think we're in my brain, the sidebars need to be on this is it's public good, public property, open generally. It's not a for-profit intention. If there's a little bit of money made left over in the slush fund, we don't need to get into the details here, but as long as it's public good and not a big cash cow, I'm good with whatever the best practices are there in the industry. I don't know that the state's always a good place to go looking for best practices. that's a different discussion for a different day.
But they're definitely practicing, that's for sure. They're
They're,
doing
they're
something.
practicing.
Russ?
I don't have a Tesla, so I don't know the answer to this. Are those just used, their chargers just used for Teslas, or are they generic?
The Tesla ones were just used for Teslas. Now, I don't own an EV, but I think that as in 2022, Tesla released an adapter that all of their chargers could be used for the J2 182 or whatever standard, like generic charging port.
And I just read a report, glanced through a report where they're going to, Tesla has agreed to or being directed to go more generic with their connectors so that they can be used on other vehicles without the adapter. So I think they're going to, newer Teslas coming on are going to have a more generic adapter, is the way I read it. So
So if Musk is doing this, 285,000? Is that what somebody said? 285,000 chargers?
Yeah.
Oh, is Tesla looking to put out chargers like they do now? Because it would be a parallel effort if governments are putting them out and manufacturers are putting them out.
So I don't know of any, we're getting to a lot of, I don't know of any manufacturers that are just putting out chargers without a cost or a fee. Anybody can go buy a car and then they're responsible for their own charging. Well, most people charge at home, but not everybody. And that's why that DC fast charger was so critical, is because you can get 60, 70% charged in 25, 30 minutes. What I was referencing was how many cars Tesla was selling, and they're the largest EV manufacturer, but they're one of several. And so there's just so it's a chicken and the egg thing I brought up. They're making so many EV cars, the prices have come down 30% or so. So I think that there's going to be more demand for charging, which makes it easier to buy EV cars. And so I think that cycle continues.
Lisa, you had a comment?
The Tesla chargers are specific to only Tesla. No other EV can use them. And Teslas do come with a kit. So a Tesla can use anyone's charger. It's just like an adapter piece.
So they can use anyone's, but no one can use theirs.
Right. Yeah.
It's called a monopoly.
Okay.
But the chargers that we purchase through ChargePoint are usable by anyone that has that adapter. They are not only used by Tesla. They're a third party.
Okay, great.
Yeah. I do agree. I think there does need to be a policy, talking about the opinion of the voters. We need to explain how having electric chargers supports the transportation network of the community. I also think that shoot, I lost it.
That's okay. Senior
No,
moment. Senior
but
moment,
yeah. So, kind of explaining how this fits in, that it is strictly a public good, that, as you said, Best Buy isn't going to have us pay for having it done. Oh, I know what the other part of it was. Remember, probably a year and a half ago, all the talk around here was about greenhouse gases and mitigation. And this can come into play with that as well. I don't know if there can be a mitigation bank or something like that, where we say, hey, PPRTA already paid for so much support for electric vehicles, and that offsets, a certain amount of development that we want to do or something like that. But showing good faith that we're moving toward lower greenhouse gas emissions, I think, could come into play as well.
There is a formula for credits that you can get and take, and PPACG goes through some of that in their planning and the project submissions in the TAC and that kind of stuff. So there is a mechanism within that greenhouse gas thing for credits. So I don't know whether this would fall into there or not, but there is a mechanism in that plan.
It's an excellent point. And also the system tells me every time I log in that, like, the amount of electric charges that we've had, charging sessions that we've had, and it tells you like how many kilograms of, emissions we've saved. And then it also says it's the equivalent of like planting 180 trees and letting them grow for 10 years. So it is giving me a measurable piece of data that we could physically use to offset another measurable piece of data. So it's a really interesting perspective.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Larry?
oh, we do have a hand raised online, just awareness.
Oh, okay,
but
sorry.
After Larry, but I just want to let you know Alan has his hand raised.
Okay, let Larry and then Alan, I'll come to you.
Dole, you say that you have up to a year to for the grant.
Correct.
What time, when we say a year, when is that year up?
I think we got awarded the grant in October type
So
thing.
we got it
We have
long.
some time.
We
Yeah,
have
we have
some
some time. And also fortunately, like when we did Hiawatha, that was back when I actually had to do a load use form with them, and the transformers were 60 weeks out. They were a year and months out. So we had to request it. And then I had to let the state know that there's no way we can install this for a year and a half. But now that we have existing everything, it's literally pulling the old chargers off and putting new ones on. So, and the lead time on those is 2 to 3 weeks. So really, once we get our, we follow the rules, follow the processes, and get whatever approvals that may come, the process could happen a month or two after that.
Great, good deal. Alan, you got a question?
I just had a comment on this discussion about first of all, about Tesla. In December, a consortium of all the other US manufacturers of EVs agreed that they are going to migrate to the Tesla type plug. So that's going to be universal in the future. And the second thing regarding Tesla, with their national network of proprietary chargers, they are moving away from that. And one of the motivations for them doing that, to open it up to other vehicles, is the fact that way they qualify for some of the infrastructure funding that was passed last year. So the Tesla, non-Tesla thing is going to go away. And I just thought that was worth, we're a little foggy on that. And just one other comment and observation. I do have an electric vehicle, and I was up in Denver over the Christmas holidays, and normally I could just drive in anywhere and just plug in and do a fast charge. And there were lines of, dozens of cars trying to get to them. So we're woefully under provision for that function. So I think it's probably a critical type of transportation activity that we need to address. And I fully support having that, coming up with a policy so we don't have this debate over and over again. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Good comment. All right, Carlos.
Yeah, thanks very much, Don. Just more of a question. When I, of course, last month we approved this, and I had always considered the pool area pretty close to the downtown area, and so you could plug in the charger and actually walk to downtown. So I had always in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the pool, the fitness center, isn't that kind of like an overflow area for the tourists, for Hiawatha Gardens, in other words, because it's so close? I mean, I've been there, and you just right there, and it's just like maybe a half a mile, maybe 3/4 a mile down to the Memorial Park there. So this goes back to, I guess it's a two-part question. One of them is that kind of the general, am I fairly characterizing the pool area, this location, that it can be considered an overflow for the parking, downtown parking?
I think officially it's not supposed to be. I think it's supposed to, that a downtown visitor parks in areas where Hiawatha on-street parking. We have several other downtown parking lots that are metered and managed. The pool does not have meters. It doesn't have parking logics data, which is our data that tells us how many vacancies are in the parking lot. Unofficially, I think it can be used as overflow parking for people that are visiting the city. I mean,
I can answer for you since
Sure.
I go there all the time. You cannot. Unless you're going to the pool, you're not supposed to be parked there. So you can park, you can get your EV fuel, and then you can leave. But no, it's not overflow parking.
Yeah, I've parked there too. I've done that. I'm kind of they're advisory signs, just like this committee.
Yeah.
Well, you're
but
right.
yeah, I know,
So
I understand there is a
give you a
constraint there,
ticket,
but and the reason and you bring up a good point. That's the reason I asked that. If this is an area that's not open to the public, that could inform how we write this board policy, because I would be troubled to say, okay, a private parking lot that's not supposed to be used except for particular, like the residents, for example, the pool is only for the residents there, unless you're using a fitness center. That would help inform any kind of policy. We've got to make sure that we have a policy, I think, that where if we're going to put in chargers, it's not to be benefiting only a particular group of citizens within the RTA. So, and I would include our guests, our visitors to that area. So I just want to bring that up because I would think we would want to do something where we are ensuring that whatever we build out is benefiting the public, not just a small sliver of people who are residents of the area. So I just want to put that into consideration.
No, it's a great point. And so your question was, is that generally area used as overflow downtown parking? Unofficially, it's not supposed to be. It really is supposed to be used to access Creek Walk Trail. And we have a transit stop there. And most importantly, people that are using the pool and rec center. And we do have an outdoor pool. So in the summertime, it's a kiddie pool. Lots of people come and use it in the summertime. They're visitors. So our rec center does allow day passes and visitors. You don't have to necessarily be a resident. You just have to come and pay the membership fee, or I don't even know what they are. So it is absolutely a public parking lot available to the public, and the chargers as they sit today are available to whoever wants to park there and charge their vehicle.
Just to help move things along, I think, do you have what you need at this point, staff?
Well, I was going to turn it back to Rick because we've got to kind of go through a procedure here. So, Rick.
I think I'm open to input from CAC members, but what I intend to do is put together a checklist, 1 through 15, and then whatever the CAC feels the numbers 1 through 15 that you like, that might help determine what the policy is.
Right. In terms of a procedure of rescinding and redoing what we did, do you want to cover that?
Well, at some point, probably the next month, if you want to revisit your approval of last month, your positive recommendation of the board that the board postponed, if you want to revisit that and potentially change that or allow for a vote to change it, then you'd have to go through a motion to reconsider your December motion recommending to approve. And then if there was a 2/3 vote of the same folks that were here in December, well, I'm sorry, let me back up. The motion maker of the motion to reconsider would have to be in the unanimous vote and have attended in December. The seconder does not have to be. But then the majority of those who vote on the motion to reconsider, if you approve the motion to reconsider, then you've wiped the slate clean of the December motion, and then you start over with a discussion on Manitou. But you probably want to do the board policy first before you even touch on the step of yes or no motion to reconsider the December motion. But I'm sorry if that was.
Go get Robert's rules and read them. Yeah.
So I'm all for easy, if that makes any sense.
Let's just
Make it easy.
So we'll consider this as a discussion, and that we took no action and are postponing any further decision on this subject until we get the board's answer on policy first. Is that a reasonable way to summarize our where we are?
Meanwhile, last month's vote stands.
But we postponed any action because the board didn't approve it.
Yeah.
So our position hasn't changed. The board didn't change it. So it's.
You're good with that?
CAC approved, CAC recommended, but the board did not act. So.
Looking at it in my mind as the board's asked for a refinement and some policies to layer on top of our approval. That makes sense. That's kind of the way I'm seeing it. Our approval stands. Let's just sprinkle on some magic
there we
dust to make it clear for future applications.
Or depending on the board policy that you recommend, that may support your prior recommendation to approve, or it may not. If it does, and you might want to wait until the board approves a policy.
Yes.
Before you take up the, so you would recommend a board policy, then the board would approve a policy, then come back to you to see if you want to sustain your December vote, or if you want to have a motion to reconsider it and have a different vote.
Or just have the board disapprove it, then we don't have to change anything.
Hey, no.
No.
Use your
No,
best
no, I just-
judgment
all right.
and give us a good
Well, I
recommendation.
guess, so Rick, just for our expectation, if that were to be the process, we'd be looking at a minimum of the March RTA meeting to have that potentially approved.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That-
All right.
yeah, guinea pig.
Great discussion. Thank you, Dole. Thanks for
Thank-
you guys' cooperation
Yeah,
and
thank you very much.
yeah. Great discussion, folks. Okay. Item number 8A, member governments and other reports, City of Colorado Springs Transit. Lan.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Line Rail Transit Services Division Manager. In your packet is our monthly report. I promise I won't go as long as Dole. The information is in there, year-to-date information, and remind you, this is the information as of November ridership. So our year-to-date ridership information, we're looking at around 90% ridership compared to pre-pandemic. The national average that there is a American Public Transit Association, they're tracking that information. The last time I checked, it was about 77% nationwide. So we're a little ahead, which is very promising. Under the transit highlight section, we included some pictures at downtown terminal when we did the rider appreciation event. We received very positive feedback from the riders. They were very appreciative of the hot chocolate and just us being there. And they actually said it was really nice to be part of that event. Metro Rights van pool promotion. There were some questions last month about how we promote van pool. So we included some recent information in there. There is a clip right there in this packet that you can click on. It's a quick video that we put together with KKTV, and there are also ongoing advertising campaign through March. We don't know the effect, the return on investment yet, but we're seeing a lot of clicks on that video. We're also developing a employer-based toolkit with the really focus on educating people about the van pool program. And once we have the information together, we're going to go out to employers, maybe schools and military bases, trying to promote this program. I would like to add just one more information to what Gail mentioned about the fuel contract. The city normally locks in about 80% of the usage that they project for the year. So if the market is lower than what we locked in, we will choose to buy it on the market. If the market goes higher, we'll come back to the locked in rate. So just one more information. Terminal restrooms, we are working with, really CSU is leading the efforts. They're rerouting the sewer line underground under the terminal. So we're hoping that work can be completed hopefully next week and we can open the bathrooms. Is that?
You answered, your last comment answered the question I was going to ask. So what's the status on the terminal? Any questions for Lan on transit? Anybody online? Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
You too.
All right, item 8B, monthly change order and property acquisition report. That's information that's in your packet. Any questions for Gail? All right, not seeing any, we'll move on. 8C, El Paso County, same thing, monthly change order property acquisition. Josh is here to answer any questions. You both got off easy.
Always just one question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Since we have Josh, and I didn't see any update here on the South Academy Bridge project. I know just from driving it from time to time, it looks like good on you. Congratulations. You now got, from our last meeting to today's meeting, you're doing two-way traffic on a one-way street, which is, I think, good. And any other updates you'd like to share with us, since it's such a highly visible major arterial project?
No real, excuse me. Thank you. No real updates. Other than we're looking at, obviously there was some issues with the settlement that we discovered from one of the peers, and we're applying the same analysis towards the other ones to make sure that as we continue the work, if there is issues with some of the other foundational items, that we can address those immediately, so we don't have to keep closing and opening, closing and opening. Our consultant is still looking at long-term support during construction and during the scour mitigation, hopefully to the point where we could open both lanes at some point soon. They haven't determined what the long-term fix is yet. So that's a real update. It's unfortunate that that happened, but it's kind of the nature of construction, especially when you're building and working around 50 or 60-year-old structures like that. One of the other things we are looking at is trying to find some additional funding for the bridge replacements themselves. Kind of one of the consequences of the last few years of inflation and having to de-scope and value engineer this project was removing some of the components of the bridge replacement itself. There just wasn't enough money to do so. So Victoria Chavez, who most of you probably know, is scouring all possible funding sources to try to find some bridge money that's available to either supplement or support a project in the future for the bridge replacement themselves. So
overall, it's going well. And again, congratulations. It's a tough job. We got Fort Carson, 28,000 GIs, people going to our regional airport, Pikes Peak College, people using it. There's so many valuable regional.
I think this is a template going forward. Anytime we have a project, we're just going to shut everything down, make people mad, and then open up a little bit. So the bar really low, and then everybody's going to be happy with what we do. So I think this proves that approach is sustainable.
Great strategy.
That's not what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Record that on public record. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Rick, report on recent board actions. Oh, excuse me. Maintenance of effort levels. Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is just an information item. We sent out the reminder to the member government staffs mid-December, indicating that the reports are due late January for the February 7 CAC and the February 14 board presentations and review and approvals. Just information at this stage.
Okay. 9A, report on recent board actions. That report was in your packet. Any questions on anything from last month's board? All right. 9B, CAC annual report to the board. That draft is in your report. My best effort of trying to tell the board what we've done this year and whatnot. So if anybody's got some questions, changes, or anything, please get them to Rick and he can get them to me. Otherwise, we'll we probably need, do we need to approve that one, Rick? Yeah, we need to approve that. So are there any comments or feedback on that letter that I put together? Do I have a motion to make a recommendation to pass that to the board? Ed, thank you. Any second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Any further discussion? All those in favor of making a recommendation to the board to approve the letter I've written, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Also in your report is Rick's staff review of the work and the invoices that have been submitted, and he spent a lot of time driving around this month.
Yes, sir.
Last month. And again, for some of the newer members, the purpose of this is to verify when we get an invoice that somebody said we laid 10 feet of concrete. Rick goes out and makes sure there's 10 feet of concrete. I've ridden with him in the past, and it's he looks at everything very closely, as you would expect Rick to do. So that way we make sure that we're accountable for that work. All right, item number 10, any topics for next month, any burning issues we need to talk about?
So, Mr. Chair, I have one.
Okay, David.
Just reflecting back on Richard Robertson, God rest his soul, and one topic he brought up. This can be a little delicate, but I'll throw it out anyways. I think that as pleased as we all are that COVID is now behind us and in-person meetings are much more common and popular than they ever maybe have been. I would like to offer, just for this group's consideration, I don't know if we need a standard, but I'd like to see, there's some people online, I don't know that I know, honestly, members that I know are deeply engaged. We seldom hear from everybody at every meeting, but I'd like to just suggest that for those who are remote and largely choose to stay quiet and feel a little disconnected from the group of us who come and make the effort to be here in person. I'd just like to offer that there may be a standard or suggested level of in-person attendance, 50% of the meetings once a year. I don't care, but I think at least once a year, doggone it, to get down here in person and participate or participate actively in the group, or otherwise it's just a name on a screen of strangers that we never get to know. And I don't feel getting our money's worth. So there.
Okay, good comment. Anything else? All right. Well, then with that, seeing as I didn't bang the gavel for the calling us to order, I'll bang it and we'll call us adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Be safe. Have a great month.